Imagine for a moment that you're living in the most technologically advanced era in recorded history and age, where satellites orbit silently above your head, quantum particles flicker in and out of certainty, and robotic explorers roam the surfaces of alien worlds. We have the capacity to detect gravitational waves from collisions of black holes billions of light years away. And yet, in the very same breath, so many of us are still asking the most ancient of human questions. Who am I? Really? How peculiar it is, this paradox of progress. We can send our machines to Mars, but many can't find peace within their own minds. We map the cosmic microwave background to uncover the universe's infancy, but we struggle to remember the last time we truly felt present with ourselves. We've decoded the genome and weaponized artificial intelligence, but the mystery of consciousness, what it means to be aware, to be alive, to be you, remains unsolved. So here's the strange part. While we've become masters of measuring the physical world, we've yet to fully reconcile with the vast frontier that lies within the internal universe of thought, feeling, and identity. And that's where this journey begins. Not in a spaceship or laboratory, but in the quiet, often overlooked spaces of the human mind spaces where science, soul, and self-awareness begin to touch. We live in a world that's obsessed with the outside, what we do, how much we produce, how fast we move. But what if the most important shift isn't happening out there in the stars, but right here within you? Think about it. In all the noise, maybe you're experiencing an upgrade not of your body or your tech, but of your perception. It's like tuning your mind to a higher frequency, just like how a telescope needs fine-tuning to see farther into the universe. Now, before your skepticism activates, and I know it well, for I carry it too, consider this. Just as dark matter eludes our direct measurement, but reveals itself through gravitational influence, perhaps this higher self is not a mystical phantom, but a pattern in alignment between your thoughts and the greater architecture of reality. In physics, we talk about resonance how two systems can influence each other when they vibrate at matching frequencies. In biology, we speak of homeostasis, the body's ability to self-regulate in pursuit of balance. And in psychology, we speak of integration, the weaving together of fractured aspects of the self. Perhaps what we're witnessing in moments of profound peace, clarity, and intuition is resonance between your present self and your optimal self, between your daily awareness and a higher intelligence encoded in your own biology, your own mind. And this is where it gets really interesting, because every so often, perhaps during a walk in nature, or in the hush between thoughts, you catch a glimpse of this other self, the one that doesn't chase status, the one that doesn't flinch from truth, the one that feels inherently that you are not just a collection of memories and reactions, but a node in the vast web of the cosmos, a spark of order inside entropy, a conscious flicker in an otherwise unconscious universe. So let's treat this seriously, as scientists and philosophers both. Let's assume for a moment that this higher self is not a fantasy, but a developmental stage-up possibility space built into the very architecture of human potential. And if that's the case, then surely, just as the body sends signals of growth, bone pain, hormone shifts, new sensitivities, the mind must too. But what are the signals? What does it look like, feel like, when your consciousness begins to realign with a more complete version of itself? Look, his isn't some abstract list of things to check off. These are real, observable patterns like the cosmic background radiation that pervades the universe. You can't see it directly, but it influences everything we observe about the cosmos. Similarly, you might not always see the shifts happening within you, but they're affecting how you experience the world. So let's decode them not with blind faith, but with curiosity, awe, and a commitment to the truth. First, you start noticing moments when things just fall into place. You think of someone and they call you. You miss a bus and somehow avoid an accident. Your mind might chalk it up to coincidence, but your deeper sense, your inner scientist, starts to wonder, is this really chance or is there something more at play? Like gravity sometimes, you don't see it, but you feel its effects. It feels like a deeper intelligence is nudging you, not controlling you, but arranging the chessboard in ways you can't yet predict. In astrophysics, we use the concept of non-locality. How particles can remain connected regardless of space. Maybe, in your own way, you're experiencing the non-local guidance of a consciousness that exists outside of time. And when you begin to trust these nudges, you're not abandoning reason, you're including a broader spectrum of data. Second, peace amidst entropy. Most of the universe trends toward disorder. That's the second law of thermodynamics. And yet, life pushes back it, creates structure, order, systems. The same goes for your mind. You may be surrounded by chaos deadlines, conflicts, world events, but inside, something starts to stabilize. A still point, not apathy, but equanimity. A calm awareness that isn't shaken by every shift in circumstance. You begin to observe your reactions instead of being consumed by them. This is the psychological equivalent of gravitational lensing. Your higher self distorts the field just enough to allow a clearer perspective. You're not free from challenges, you're just no longer at their mercy. Third, an uncanny sensitivity to nature. Not just a preference for beaches or forests, but a visceral, almost cellular appreciation for the elegance of natural systems. You start seeing the Fibonacci spiral in a sunflower, the fractal pattern in tree branches, the harmony of predator and prey. It's as if your senses are recalibrating to perceive the mathematical poetry of existence. You don't just walk through nature, you listen to it. You feel it. Because somewhere deep down, your cells remember, you're not in nature. You are nature. Fourth, compassion expands beyond reason. You find yourself feeling empathy not just for your friends or those who agree with you, but for strangers, for adversaries, even for people who hurt you. Why? Because you start to see the system. You recognize that pain begets pain, fear begets fear, and that most people are not cruel, they're wounded. Your perspective broadens from binary judgment to systems thinking. You stop asking, why are they like that? And begin asking, what conditions created that behavior? That's not weakness. That's moral gravity. And like gravity, compassion pulls things together. It stabilizes what would otherwise drift apart. Fifth, creativity becomes inevitable, not forced, not fabricated, but flowing like a plasma current in the magnetosphere of your mind. Ideas appear not through effort, but through alignment. Your imagination becomes less of a daydream and more of a download. You pick up subtle patterns, interconnections, insights that others miss. It's as if your mind is finely tuned to the right cosmic frequency. The same way a telescope must be precisely calibrated to receive signals from distant galaxies, your brain begins picking up inspiration from somewhere else. Not out there, but in here, where the two begin to blur. Sixth, beauty arrests you, not just in museums or sunsets, but in human behavior, in sacrifice, in resilience, in someone's laugh that echoes like stardust across a room. You start to perceive beauty as a form of information proof that order can emerge from chaos, that something in the universe wants to express elegance, symmetry, love. The astrophysicist in you whispers, this can't be random. The poet in you answers, it never was. Seventh, you begin to detach from material lives not in a renunciation, but in a rebalancing. You no longer seek identity through possession. You don't need to prove your worth through symbols. Why? Because you've begun to remember your intrinsic value. You've felt the echo of your own cosmic origin story. The stardust that birthed your body is richer than gold. What you own no longer defines who you are. Who you are defines what you allow into your life. Eighth, dreams intensify. Not always pleasant, but potent. They become metaphors, messages, experiments. Your subconscious stops whispering and starts teaching. And if you're willing to listen, you begin decoding yourself. Just as astronomers read the spectrum of light to infer the composition of stars, you begin reading your dreams to infer the evolution of your soul. These are not fantasies. These are data. And the analyst is you. Ninth, a strange thing happens. You begin to like yourself. Not just tolerate, not just fix, but genuinely appreciate who you are becoming. Self-love stops being a slogan and becomes a scientific principle because you understand that a system thrives when its parts are in harmony. And you finally are starting to harmonize. You become less self-absorbed, but more self-aware. Less perfectionist, but more precise. You become coherent. And 10th, reality begins to respond faster. Your thoughts align with outcomes. Synchronicities speed up. It's as if the universe is echoing back your internal frequency with surprising precision. This is not magic. This is resonance, coherence, constructive interference. Your inner signal, finally clear, begins shaping the waveform of your experience, and the boundaries between cause and effect, self and world, observer and observed begin to blur. So, what does this all mean for you? It means remembering. Remembering that merging with your higher self isn't a single moment of enlightenment. It's a journey, a process. Just like the evolution of the universe itself gradual, unfolding over time. Think about it. Stars don't just appear overnight. They form slowly, over billions of years. Your growth, too, happens like that, layer by layer. It is not the abandoning of science, but the expansion of science to include the observer, to include you. Because in the end, the most profound discoveries don't always come from telescopes or particle accelerators. Sometimes they come from listening to your own consciousness with the same reverence you'd offer the stars. And maybe, just maybe, what we call the higher self is simply the version of you that already knows this. You see, we tend to think of growth in dramatic terms: sudden awakenings, radical shifts, breakthroughs announced with fireworks. But nature doesn't always work that way. Stars don't explode into being. They condense over eons from collapsing clouds of dust and gas. Galaxies evolve through gravitational ballet, not in minutes, but across billions of years. Even consciousness, this miracle we so often take for granted, emerges not in an instant, but layer by layer, neuron by neuron, shaped by biology, environment, and time. So it's only fitting that merging with your higher self doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives quietly, subtly, like dawn creeping over the edge of the earth. And yet, when you start experiencing alignment with your higher self, you begin noticing subtle shifts in how you respond to the world. Your mental framework recalibrates. Instead of focusing solely on what do I want, you start considering, what is the most effective contribution I can make? This isn't some abstract idea. It's about how your brain adapts and functions more effectively when it's in tune with your purpose. In physics, we say that systems tend toward equilibrium homeostasis. And perhaps your mind, left long enough in dissonance, eventually seeks out harmony. You stop chasing noise. You start tuning to signal. But here's the caveat. The process isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's often the opposite. Because becoming more attuned to your higher self means becoming more sensitive, more aware of misalignments you once ignored. Things that once brought you joy now feel hollow. Conversations that used to feel casual now feel draining. Your tolerance for superficiality diminishes, not because you've become judgmental, but because your inner standards have shifted. You begin to crave depth, truth, coherence. It's like a musician who's trained their ears they can no longer enjoy an off-key tune, or an astronomer whose telescope has been precisely calibrated. They can no longer unsee the patterns they've discovered in the stars. Awareness, once expanded, rarely shrinks. And this sensitivity isn't limited to emotions. It extends to your choices, your relationships, even your body. You might find that some environments feel different to you, not because they are objectively harmful, but because your brain, now more attuned to subtle signals, starts processing the information it once overlooked. It's like adjusting a telescope. When you fine-tune the lens, suddenly you start noticing things that were always there but never visible before. Just as migratory birds sense Earth's magnetic field, perhaps you too begin to sense what aligns and what repels. This isn't mysticism. It's biology. It's physics. It's feedback. So what do you do when you realize the life you've built was designed for a different version of you? That's the existential tension many face as they approach this merger with the higher self. Like a spacecraft shedding its lower stage to escape Earth's gravity, there comes a moment when you must let go of what got you here beliefs. patterns, identities, in order to enter orbit around a new truth. And yes, it's disorienting. But disorientation is often the sign that you're finally stepping out of autopilot. And let's talk about autopilot, because it's one of the most insidious forces in modern life. We wake up, check notifications, pour coffee, enter meetings, reply to emails, scroll through headlines, and try to soothe the growing sense of something missing, something unfulfilled. But instead of stopping to examine that signal, we bury it with distractions, with consumption, with speed, as if racing faster could somehow outrun the silence waiting at the end of every day. But here's the thing. Your higher self doesn't make loud demands. It speaks through subtle cues like intuition or a gut feeling, much like how cosmic background radiation is always there, quietly shaping the universe, even though we don't always notice it. And if you pause long enough, if you truly pause, you might begin to hear it. Maybe it's the voice that tells you to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Maybe it's the pull toward a career that nourishes your curiosity, not just your wallet. Maybe it's the realization that you've been performing for an audience that doesn't even know your name. These are not random epiphanies. These are signal transmissions from the part of you that already sees the long arc of your life. Not in years, but in meaning. You know, we often compartmentalize our lives work here, relationships there, health somewhere else. But here's the thing. The universe isn't a random collection of parts. It's a complex system where everything from the smallest particles to the largest galaxies interacts according to fundamental laws of physics. In the same way, your mind, your emotions, and your actions should work together, aligned by the laws of your own inner truth. That's the kind of harmony your higher self is aiming for. And when that happens, when internal contradiction begins to dissolve, something remarkable occurs. You stop leaking energy, you stop wasting cognitive bandwidth on self-conflict, and suddenly, what once felt impossible becomes manageable. Not because the world changed, but because you did. This too mirrors physics. When different systems are in sync, like the way light waves can amplify each other, when they're in phase, they create a stronger signal. This same principle can apply to your life. When your beliefs, emotions, and actions align, you become more effective at navigating the world around you. Just like a well-tuned radio picks up a clearer signal. You become a signal strong enough to move matter through intention, through presence, through clarity. And yes, clarity is power. Not just motivational poster power, but real neurological power. Studies in cognitive science show that decision, fatigue indecision, hesitation, second-guessing drains mental resources. But when you live in alignment with your higher self, decisions become simple. Not always easy, but simple. You know what fits, you know what doesn't. Because you've stopped outsourcing your truth to consensus reality. Now, let's pause here not to conclude, but to reflect. What is this higher self, really? Is it some angelic version of you, floating in a cloud of divine enlightenment? Probably not. That's metaphoruseful but limited. More likely, the higher self is simply the emergent intelligence that arises when your thoughts, biology, and values synchronize. It is not an escape from your humanity. It is the fullest expression of it. Just as atoms form molecules, and molecules form cells, perhaps your habits, choices, and reflections form a higher level pattern we call you. And perhaps the higher self isn't a destination at all. It's a direction, a vector, an attractor field toward which your psyche naturally orients when given the chance. Think of it like the North Star. You may never reach it, but it guides your path. Not because it demands perfection, but because it evokes precision. Not because it promises comfort, but because it reveals truth. And truth, even when inconvenient, is the gravitational force of all meaningful transformation. So if you're experiencing these signs, this quiet uprising of clarity, compassion, coherence, don't dismiss them. Don't gaslight your own awakening. You're not imagining things. You're perceiving more. You're not broken. You're integrating. You're not losing control. You're recalibrating toward a deeper order. But with that order comes responsibility. Because once you've tasted alignment, misalignment becomes unbearable. Once you've glimpsed your potential, apathy no longer feels like an option. And once you've connected with your higher self, you can no longer pretend not to know. That's the price of awareness. But it's also the reward. Because when you operate from that space, not just occasionally, but consistently, your life stops being a series of reactions and starts becoming a sequence of responses. Deliberate, conscious, effective. You become the astronomer of your own experience, mapping patterns, charting anomalies, following the arc of your own becoming. And here's the best part. It's not about becoming a completely new person. It's about peeling back the layers of conditioning and biases that have built up over time. Just like how scientists uncover hidden truths about the universe, you're simply discovering more of who you've always been beneath the surface. In terms of the cosmos, you're part of a universe that's been evolving for over 13 billion years. The atoms in your body were formed in stars long before you were born. Your very existence is the result of a cosmic journey that began long before humans ever walked the earth. And when you align with your higher self, you're not escaping reality. You're engaging with it fully, deeply, courageously. So keep listening, keep noticing, keep aligning. The universe is not outside you. It is unfolding through you. Now, let's zoom out. On a planetary scale, Earth itself is undergoing a kind of awakening. The climate is shifting. Technology is accelerating. Societies are polarized. And in the midst of this, something else is happening, something quieter, but just as significant. Individuals are beginning to question the nature of identity, value, meaning. The question of who am I is evolving into who are we becoming? And that's not just a philosophical shift, it's an evolutionary one. In biology, when a system is under prolonged stress, it either adapts or collapses. This moment in history is a test of adaptation, not just technologically, but spiritually. Not just politically, but personally. We're being called not by ideology, but by entropido, evolve the way we relate to ourselves and each other. And the higher self isn't a luxury in that process. It's a necessity. It's not some spiritual add-on for those with spare time. It's the internal compass we need to navigate complexity without falling into chaos. So what does this mean for you, the individual? It means that your private awakening, your late-night reflections, your dreams, your quiet acts of courage are not separate from the evolution of the species. They are it. You are a node in the network, a cell in the global brain. And the clarity you cultivate in yourself radiates outward like a photon launched from the surface of a star. That photon doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for consensus. It simply shines. This is not hyperbole. It's resonance. In quantum physics, we know that observers influence the field. In chaos theory, we know that small inputs can create vast changes over time. And in system science, we know that coherence in one part of the system improves the health of the whole. So when you align with your higher self, you are not just improving your life, you are stabilizing a pattern. You are anchoring a frequency. You are participating in the cosmic feedback loop that allows intelligence to evolve through experience. And yes, this includes the mundane. You might expect that merging with your higher self means leaving the ordinary behind, floating in bliss, quoting sacred texts while sipping herbal tea. But that's not the work. The real work happens in traffic, in conversation, in spreadsheets, in heartache, in moments when no one is watching, because the higher self doesn't ask you to escape life. It asks you to show up more fully in it. It's not about disconnecting from reality. It's about engaging with it more fully by understanding the underlying patterns that govern it, rather than simply reacting to its surface. Through a posture of curiosity, not control. It's about seeing the divine in the details, the sacred in the seemingly small, like the way a parent comforts a child, or the way a stranger holds the door a few seconds longer than necessary. These are not trivial gestures. They are signals, evidence that consciousness can shape behavior, that care can scale. And here's the irony. The more you integrate with your higher self, the less you need to talk about it. You stop announcing your alignment. You just live it, because you understand that truth isn't something you say. It's something you embody. Like gravity, it doesn't ask for belief. It demonstrates itself through its effects. And these changes aren't just abstract. They have real-world consequences. You might start noticing people responding to you differently, not because they're admiring you, but because they sense something has shifted in you. It's similar to the way we feel changes in our environment. When the air pressure changes, we feel it, even if we can't see it. The shift in your presence is real, and it impacts those around you. You'll notice it in the way challenges don't derail you, but recalibrate you. You'll notice it in the way your past no longer feels like a burden, but like compost fuel for the flowering of something new. This doesn't mean you become perfect. It means you become precise. You notice when you're out of alignment faster. You correct course without shame. You learn to distinguish between discomfort that leads to growth and discomfort that warns of danger. That's wisdom. That's integration. That's what happens when the emotional body and the analytical mind begin to dance in sync. And no, this journey isn't linear. Just like the expansion of the universe, it accelerates unevenly. Some days feel like quantum leaps. Others feel like retrograde motion. But step back far enough and you'll see the vector, a steady movement toward coherence, toward complexity with clarity, toward individuality without isolation. Let's talk about individuality for a moment, because one of the most powerful realizations you'll have as you merge with your higher self is this: uniqueness is not separation, it's contribution. Just as each element in the periodic table has a role to play, from helium fueling stars to carbon forming life, you too are here to express a particular note in the cosmic symphony. Not louder than others, not quieter, just essential. And when you stop comparing your note to someone else's, you start playing in tune. This is why self-acceptance is not self-indulgence. It's calibration. It's the recognition that you can't access higher wisdom while rejecting your instrument. You must meet yourself fully, flaws, quirks, regrets, all of it, because your higher self doesn't sit in judgment. It sits in perspective. It sees the data of your life not as failures, but as feedback, not as shame, but as signal. And when you adopt that lens, you become unshakable, not immune to emotion, but no longer ruled by it. You still feel anger, sadness, fear, but you feel them as weather, not identity. You experience them without drowning in them. You move through them without clinging to them. This is emotional detachment in its truest form. Not apathy, but awareness. Not repression, but release. And from that place, you begin to live differently. You choose conversations that feed your growth. You set boundaries that honor your energy. You invest time in experiences that generate meaning, not just dopamine. You consume information more consciously, knowing that your attention is not infinite and that your cognitive bandwidth is a limited, precious resource. You begin treating your inner world the way a good scientist treats a lab, with rigor, curiosity, and respect. And slowly, the habits of your life start to change. You wake up differently. Not always early, but intentionally. You eat differently, not out of guilt, but out of care. You relate differently, not to perform, but to connect. You stop seeking validation and start offering value. You stop performing certainty and start cultivating presence. And presence, more than anything else, becomes your new currency. In a world addicted to speed, presence is rebellion. In a culture obsessed with image, presence is substance. In a society that rewards noise, presence is signal. It is the space in which insight arises. It is the silence in which truth is heard. It is the atmosphere in which the higher self breathes. And so you breathe, not to survive, but to awaken. Not just air, but awareness. Each inhale becomes a reaffirmation, I am here. Each exhale becomes a release, I am no longer who I was. And breath by breath, you become more than you imagined. Not because you've added something, but because you've shed what you no longer need. This is the paradox of growth. You become more by becoming less reactive, less conditioned, less attached. And in that emptiness, space is made for insight, for peace, for the voice of your higher self to echo not as command, but as companionship. Because ultimately, the higher self isn't some exalted stranger. It's not a divine being floating above your shoulder. It's you fully integrated. It's the version of you that arises when defense gives way to clarity, when habit gives way to choice, when fear gives way to truth. And truth, as any scientist will tell you, is rarely simple, but it is always liberating. So where does all of this leave us? You, sitting wherever you are, perhaps on a couch or in a car, or walking under a fading sky, listening to words that echo a part of you you've long suspected was real, but never quite had a name for. Maybe you've called it intuition, maybe you've called it soul, maybe it's been a quiet companion through your darkest nights, always just behind the curtain, waiting for you to turn inward. Now, you have another word for it, the higher self. But let's not romanticize it, because this journey, this merging, isn't about floating above the world, it's about re-entering it. Eyes open, heart calibrated, mind clarified. It's not an escape from the human condition, it's a full and conscious arrival into it. The earth doesn't need more awakened people meditating on mountaintops. It needs engineers who listen to intuition, parents who radiate presence, leaders who act from wisdom, not ego, scientists who see equations and ethics in the same sentence, citizens who understand that their internal alignment affects their external impact. That is what it means to merge with your higher self. It's not light shows or ethereal downloads. It's looking at a hurting world and asking, where am I still contributing to the pain? It's walking into your everyday life and recognizing the sacred in the practical. It's choosing your words as if they shape reality because they do. It's how you speak to a child, how you treat a stranger, how you respond when no one is watching. It's not separate from science. It is science just at the edges of what we've been willing to measure. The idea of a higher self isn't a matter of mystical belief. It's a model, much like how we use theories in science to explain the unknown. Just as we look for patterns in the cosmos to understand the universe, our minds may also reveal patterns that guide us toward better understanding of ourselves. That your consciousness, when tuned to its optimal frequency, becomes not just a spectator of the universe, but a co-creator in its unfolding. And if that's true, then your thoughts are not just internal monologues. They are variables. They affect your behavior, your relationships, and through chain reactions, your society. Every decision you make, every emotion you metabolize, becomes a small nudge in the trajectory of human evolution. It's cosmic causality just at a personal scale. So perhaps merging with your higher self is less about achieving something and more about remembering something, not who you were told to be, but who you've always been beneath the noise, the stardust that thinks, the biology that wonders, the consciousness that chooses. And when you live from that place, something profound happens. You stop trying to prove your worth. You realize that your existence is the proof, that you don't need to manufacture meaning. You are meaning, a self-aware node in a vast, ancient, ever-expanding field of possibility. So take a breath, not to calm down, but to remember that you are here on this improbable planet, orbiting an unremarkable star, in a galaxy among trillions, in a universe that, against all odds, became aware of itself through you. And with that awareness comes responsibility. Not just to feel, not just to understand, but to act with integrity, with wonder, with courage. Because your higher self isn't about seeking inner peace as an end goal. It drives you toward action, toward meaningful contributions. Think of it as a natural process, just like how stars are constantly evolving, never content to remain the same, but always moving toward their next stage of development. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Not because these words are special, but because they awaken something in you that already knows. You are not becoming someone new. You are returning to someone ancient, someone wise, someone whole. And maybe, just maybe, your very act of listening today was not random. Maybe it was the echo of a signal you sent to yourself long ago. A reminder from the stars you're made of that this is the moment to begin living from your highest orbit. With gravity, with purpose. And with a light, no shadow can distort. So go not to chase, but to align, to anchor, to embody, because the cosmos isn't just out there in the sky. It's in you. And when you align with your higher self, you bring the universe home